Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Cultivating a Culture of Teamwork in the Classroom. This is part of a series of three workshops that I will be facilitating for the Center for Teaching and Learning. There's one next month or next week on the 19th, and the topic of that one relates to leadership as it applies to our role as faculty in the classroom. The third session will be after at the beginning of spring semester sometime, and we haven't 100% nailed down the topic for that. We're looking at coaching focused communication as a possible topic, but if there's something else that you are interested in, we would love to know, because the purpose of these programs is to provide professional development to faculty. So my name is Mary White, and I teach in humanities. I'm a speech communication. I'm an assistant professor of speech communication. I have been here at Chattanooga State since 2021. And for the 20 years before that, I was in corporate training after having worked in higher ed administration and being a faculty. So I've kind of come full circle in my career back around to doing on the tail end of it what I did very early in the beginning of my professional career. And so one of the things that I really started looking at when I came into Chat State was ways to apply the work that I had done as a corporate training professional in the higher ed environment, which brings us to the topic of today's program. Have any of you ever heard of or read the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team? Anybody? I know you've heard of it. Yeah. So if you're looking for a good, quick read, if this topic interests you, I would highly, highly recommend it. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team is written by Patrick Lencioni, who is a best-selling author. He has published numerous books related to building better workplaces. And the approach that we're going to take in talking about teamwork in our program today is very much grounded in his work. He worked with Wiley Learning Solutions to develop a development program that is focused on applying the five dysfunctions, the things that tend to go wrong on teams, to a more positive approach, things that we can train people on, hence the five behaviors of a cohesive team. It's the flip side of the dysfunctions. And I spent many years, I'm a certified facilitator for that program, and I spent many years doing, and I still do, workshops with businesses on how to foster a sense of teamwork in their workplaces. Well, how does that apply to the classroom? I mean, that's kind of really what we are in our classroom environment, is that we're kind of like little team leaders for 7 weeks or 14 weeks, depending on the length of the class that you are in. And the same things that impact how effectively a group of people can work together toward an end goal in the workplace, the exact same things impact how well our students are able to go through the learning experience in a class, because they do not do that in isolation, whether we're teaching in-ground classes or online classes. And sure, it's easier for it to feel to them and to us like they're all doing it in isolation, but we're really doing them and ourselves as faculty a disservice when we allow that to happen. Do you all teach online classes sometimes, or just in both? You teach both? I think almost everybody here teaches both. And this very much applies in both environments. But what I want to talk to you about is the core concepts of the five behaviors. And then let us look together at.
You may have to click on the PowerPoint, I'm sorry.
Okay, I can just do this, that's fine. Let us look together at some ways that we can cultivate a culture of teamwork in the classroom. But before we go down that path, I'd like to ask you a few questions. And I do want to let you know the Center for Teaching and Learning is recording this, so it will be available for other faculty to watch as well. But why do you think that it is important to try to cultivate a culture of teamwork in a classroom? Or I guess I should first say, do you think it's important? Yes or no? Do you think it's important to cultivate a culture of teamwork in a classroom?
Absolutely.
So why would that be? Any thoughts on that?
We have to work in teams and throughout life, right? So I'm
Right.
just thinking it's kind of setting them up for success, for the future and
Yes.
place and
Right,
practice and.
right. And no matter what subject area we are teaching in, all of our students are here in some way, shape, or form to get the education or the training that they need that's going to help them succeed in their careers. So medical lab, business, psychology. I'm general education, I interact with students, probably all of your students at some point or the other. We have to be, there's a reason I did this kind of work full time for 20 years. Companies need to bring people in to help their employees learn how to play nicely with each other in a way that drives results, because that's what teamwork is really all about. It's really all about driving results. And for our students in our classes, the goal they have is, for many, they may tell you, oh, well, my goal is to earn an A in this, or my goal is to get an A in this class. And we remind them that the path to that is to earn an A in this class. But in many ways, regardless of subject matter, they are kind of all in it together. Like with what I teach, public speaking, it's kind of easy to see why that needs to be a team environment, because they're going to have to make themselves vulnerable in that class and stand up in front of their peers. And so from the very beginning, I strive to help them start to feel like they're part of something that's bigger than them, and to get them to see me as one of them, as someone who is there to support them in their success, and to get them to see each other that way as well. And of course, how these things are applied are going to be different depending on the type of subject matter or the context in which you are teaching. But teamwork really boils down to 5 things that all build on each other. The foundation of teamwork is trust. People cannot function effectively in the context of working with one another if there is not an element of trust. And there are different types of trust. Like if you have a student who comes in 12 minutes late every day, and you look at your watch and it's 11 after, and somebody says, oh, so-and-so's not here, you're gonna be like, oh, they'll be here in a minute. And in they walk. That's not the kind of trust I'm talking about. That's predictive trust. What I'm talking about is vulnerability-based trust. For your classroom to become a true team environment, the students in the classroom have to see that classroom as a place where they are respected and where they are valued and where they are welcomed for who they are, in as much as we have that opportunity to connect at that level of who we are in a 7-week or a 14-week class. So if we want to foster a culture of teamwork, one of the first things that we have to think of is, as leaders in that classroom, because by definition, a teacher is in a formal leadership. Now, whether that teacher behaves in a manner befitting a leader is a different topic, but that is sort of inherent to the role. Part of what we need to do as teachers is to focus on creating an environment where it is likely, where people are going to feel trusted and therefore trust. And because what you need is an environment where the members of the team are going to be willing to be transparent and be honest with each other. And that helps create a safe environment where it builds vulnerability-based trust. But that requires connecting with students at a human level, connect, and the same things that I'm talking about can apply to you and your peers, your colleagues in your department, or all of us throughout an organization. If we expect people to function as members of a team, we have to create that environment where they are going to be able to connect. And that starts with getting to know each other as a human. And they kind of have to trust one another. And it's a little bit different than in a work environment. In a work environment, if I need you to do report X so that I can do report Y, if we trust each other, I'm not going to be asking you every 5 minutes where that report is. But where does that trust come from? So a question I have for you is, what are some things that you think faculty can do to create an environment where students are comfortable feeling being transparent with us, with one another, being honest with us, one another? Any thoughts on that?
I think we model that for them. I mean, I'm not a perfect human being in any way, shape, or form, and I think my students see that, and I hope that makes them feel more comfortable, shouting out a wrong answer, like exploring. I mean, I think that's part of it, but modeling that what you want.
Right. Okay. I agree. What else? Anything else?
The words right in my mouth, modeling vulnerability, just being human in front of them. I think it's so important, just creating that warm environment where they can feel that ability to share, and to be open and
Yeah. And sometimes people get into a position where there's some formal leadership, which could be being a manager of a department, head of a project, teacher of a class, and the mindset becomes, I need them to think I have all the answers. And I don't care how much you act like you have all the answers. You don't, and your students know that you don't. And so when we're putting out information to them that they perceive as false, that does the exact opposite of cultivated culture that is characterized by trust. And trust is the foundation that everything else is built on. One of the things that, and if you have examples of things that you do, please share them as well. One of the things that I do when I'm teaching the public speaking class, and this is a true statement, when I first took public speaking, I was a horrifyingly bad speaker, to the point where when I got my first job teaching public speaking, my first professor and I, when I told her, she and I had a good laugh over it. I mean, and I tell students that, and I've had people ask me that before, why would you tell your students that you were bad at the very thing that you're supposed to teach them? And I'm like, well, I'm talking to them while I'm telling them I'm not bad at it. Now, the point is to let them see a path, that not everybody starts out. Because I think that don't students feel that way a lot? They go into a classroom and they feel intimidated. And when we don't make it okay to make mistakes or to let people kind of see what our concerns are, then that's a barrier to success. So anything that we can do to cultivate that culture of teamwork. In applying this concept in a business setting, I mean, there are diagnostic tools that are used with this program that would not really be feasible to use on a class by class basis. But even laying the groundwork to even go into the diagnostic results, one of the first things that is done is, we do something similar in class anyway. We ask students on the first day, a lot of us, I don't know if everybody here does, to introduce themselves, tell me your name, what made you take this class? What do you hope to get out of it? Something like that. And something I've realized lately that I've been doing about that is not ideal is I should go first. You talk about making yourself vulnerable to your students. When you go first and you tell them a snippet of your story in a way that is relatable to them, that kind of sets the tone for the level of sharing that is expected of them. So, and as much as I live and breathe this kind of stuff, I've never thought about that formally in class before the last couple of weeks. Like, I need to stop putting the burden on one of these 24 people who just met each other to be the first one to speak, just based on the sheer luck of where they fell in the alphabet or where they're sitting in the classroom. Because this is kind of related to next week's topic, but being a leader is about meeting people where they are. And if you want people to be willing to open up, it's so important to meet them where they are and to clarify the expectations. And like when you're with a group of business people that doing this training, typically you ask the leader of the team to go first and make sure they know that the level of what they share is going to impact how vulnerable the team. Because if the manager or if the teacher's like, yeah, I know people don't look forward to this class, but I'm glad I'm here and I hope you're all here and I hope you all make it through. I'm like, if that's what the teacher says at the beginning of class, I don't think there's anybody here who would say that. That's when the students are likely to be, well, I hope I get an A. I mean, they're not going to connect at that level because you set the tone. So modeling is very important. So that's one thing I haven't been doing that I am going to start doing. Another thing that I do regularly is I actively, because one of the goals for communication is to teach them how to communicate assertively, because it seems that many people need a little bit of help in that area these days. And I ask them to call me on my mistakes. I challenge them to find errors in the quizzes and reward them for pointing out and asking questions. And I think that gives them permission. That's something that I've done. And that seems to help. But it's not the whole story. We should all always be looking at ways to help team members trust one another. Can you think of any other things that you do to try to build trust with your students?
I just try to build community from the very first day. So my first day activity is I have like the cards where they put their name on the front and then they write down 3 identifying things about themselves. So I share something about myself first, and then I've got backyard chickens, and I just share some things about my life.
Yeah.
And then they can do that, and then they have to do it individually with someone to kind of just start feeling a little bit more safe and comfortable, and then sharing out to the whole class. So just trying to build that sense of belonging, community, and I try not to just call them out individually on that first class, and then it's really important for me to learn their names. So that's why that card is so important.
Yes.
So for a couple of weeks, they always have those, because I just feel like that's building that trust. And, and that's just really, really important to me.
I agree. And it helps them connect with one another too, at that name level instead of some kid in my class. So
I'm not good at it. I mean, without the cards, it's like my brain. I mean, just today I teach a dual enrollment. I just got back from Ottawa High School. I mean, we're on week 12 or something, and I just totally messed up these students' names. Like I needed the cards the whole 12 weeks.
But they know enough that you care to build the cards.
Yeah.
And so that is beneficial. So any other thoughts on?
Yeah, I think similarly, also trying to learn students' names, that's a big one. And then like I do in the first class is like I open up almost like a ask me anything. So give students an opportunity to ask me whatever they want, whatever's about me.
Oh, I love that.
So I mean, they typically just ask like, what brings you to teaching, stuff like that. Pretty basic questions, but just give them an opportunity if they're curious or if they want to have a conversation.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's great.
I like that.
This is a little bit off topic, but not really, because it relates very closely to this topic. I went to the Southern States Communication Association conference last year, and one of the panels I sat in on was a graduate student panel, and they were going through their dissertation research. But one of the things that they had identified in a lit review, and then they did a study with the undergraduate students at their school, and they found out that after public speaking, asking questions in front of other people is the most terrifying thing to traditional college age students, which that's a wonderful way to make it it's not them asking about what they don't know. It's about asking information of you. And I was really, truly shocked by that. When I got back from the conference, I asked my students, I'm like, do you think this is right? And every single one of them said, yes, absolutely. It is terrifying. So things to think. And I think that requires some trust for them to even admit it in front of each other. So, I think a lot of formal teacher training is focused on helping us build one-to-one relationships with our students, and that is very important. But those one-to-many relationships are essential as well and go a long way toward trust, because the environment itself has to feel safe. A phrase that I use in class all the time, and again, it may not be relevant for every class, but the type of class that I teach it is, I say to them all the time, we are all in this together. And of course, if there's not substance to back that up, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a slogan. But, when they come in and they're terrified to stand up and share this information, when they start to realize, oh, wait a minute, that person's going to have to, and that person's going to have to, and that person's going to have to. Teams, sometimes trauma is powerful bonding for a team, and I'm not suggesting that anyone go and traumatize their students, but in any situation where succeeding in the class is going to require them to do something that many of them find uncomfortable, they are going to perceive it that way. But it's easier to get through that type of thing when you have a team. So the most important thing we can do to try to cultivate a culture of teamwork is to figure out how to build that trust. And then there's the element of it that's on us to, say what we mean what we say. If we tell them we're going to do something, we need to do it. We've got to demonstrate that they can truly trust us. And part of that, I think, is showing empathy to them and their situations as well. Just a few semesters ago, I had a student in my class tell me that one of his professors in his field of study, and I don't remember what the field of study was, he was late with something in my classroom, and he asked me if I turn it in the next day, and I just said yes. And he's like, you don't even want to know why? I'm like, I don't care, as long as you turn it tomorrow, it's all good. And he was shocked, and he said that he had been late on something in this other class, and his professor asked him why, and he explained that it was about his job, and his professor told him, well, you're just going to have to make a choice. What's more important to you, school or your job? And wow, I mean, they have to work. They have to pay their bills. They have to keep a roof. We don't know what anybody else's situation is. And thinking about the varied backgrounds that people are, not assuming that our students have the same background that we had, whether we think theirs is better than ours or worse than ours, but really meeting them where they are and letting them speak. Listening to other people is a very important part of building trust as well. Trust is essential. You cannot build a sense of teamwork in the absence of trust. It is not possible. So that is the first and most important thing to work on. When there is trust, and I know it's hard to start over and rebuild it every 7 weeks or every 14 weeks, but that is the nature of what we do. Once a team has developed, once a group of students or any other group of people that is somewhat interdependent. And I guess I really should have defined teamwork in the beginning. A team isn't just a group of people being in the same room together or being in the same online class together. For there to be a team, there has to be some bit of interdependence. There has to be some, like in a class, the way the class sessions go is a function of how the people within that class interact with each other and within the teacher. And if someone is, foul and miserable in class, it's going to affect everyone in class. And when there's trust, even on the day that someone feels like being foul and miserable, maybe they won't, because they know the impact that it will have on others. But it does require transparency and honesty, and it starts with us. Once there is trust, then and only then is it likely that the members of that team, and this is one of the main things that we want them to do, really, is to engage in conflict around ideas. Like, we don't want to cause conflict, but isn't that what the learning process boils down to? In most cases, it's engaging in conflict around ideas, to be willing to discuss, to be willing to share information. And when there's trust, team members will be able to do that. They'll be able to constructively debate ideas. Like when there's a class that, and I have one right now, and I struggle with what can I do to build that trust? And here we are, 2 weeks away from the end of it at that point. But I have a class that has a very interesting dynamic. It's about 20% collegiate students and a few students who are returning students after being out of school, and then some who are traditional college age. And I don't think the different groups, I don't think I did a good enough job of getting the different groups to interact with each other. And so what is usually spirited debate, which we want in classes, I mean, maybe not in history, but sure, in history too. I mean, and that's how we learn, by talking through what we think and what others think and arriving at where we need to be. But so I have this class right now that I know doesn't feel that sense of teamwork. And I've been trying to kind of think about what it is that I could have done differently. And I probably needed to bring in subject matter that'll bridge. There's a pretty big generational divide in the class that is larger than what I usually see. So they're not engaging in debate, and that tells me that likely there's not trust for them to feel comfortable doing that. So what are the benefits of having our classroom environment structured such that people are willing to engage in debate around ideas? Not to fight and argue, but to debate around ideas. Any thoughts on that? Why is that important?
Why it's important for the ability for them to debate,
Mm-hmm.
just to hear other perspective and, just, I think of cultural awareness, and, like you said, generational. That's my favorite. I teach a 60, so there's 60 in my intro to psych class, and I have 15 to 70-year-olds, and it's my favorite because the older students love to share, and so I just feel like they get so many different experiences. So I'd love to figure out ways to get the younger students sharing a little bit more, but just getting all that diversity and thought and ideas and,
Yeah, because it's so valuable, because we're not, no matter what they're studying, they're going to go into jobs in the workplace where they're going to interact with people of all ages, of all backgrounds, with different skill sets, and having the ability to do that, having the ability to actually just be a good team member yourself and is so critical to success. And being a good team member is not just smiling and nodding at everything else that someone says, right? Being a good team member is supporting your efforts, but pointing out if you are doing something that is going to lead you down a path to not get the results that you need, or if it's a group project that the entire group needs. And when we have people working together where there is that interdependency and they won't engage in conflict, it turns into something that's called artificial harmony, which, that's the well-behaved class. That's the class I have now. They're very well behaved. No one causes trouble, but no one speaks. And that's not, that makes your job harder too, as the facilitator of the class, when no one speaks. And so when the facilitator has not effectively cultivated that environment of trust where there's going to be conflict around ideas, then it's everybody in the room looking at that person for what comes next. So it's even in our best interest. And a lot of times when I've worked with business leaders, their response is, I don't have time for all that mess. They can get along or they can not get along. I don't care. I just need them to work. That's the mindset. But when they don't trust each other and they won't engage in conflict, that path to results, it's very difficult. So when the members of a team have the ability to engage in conflict around one another, and you notice I circled in your handouts the first two, because these foundational things are what we're really focusing on in here, because in 45 minutes, there's only so much you can talk about, and it's not like there are three right answers that if we all do these three things, it's going to resolve. This is more about getting you thinking about what will help you cultivate a culture of teamwork in your classes. But generally speaking, the way the 5 behaviors works is that when there is trust, that is required for people to be willing to engage in conflict constructively. With a team that is willing to engage in conflict constructively, that means that they are going to interact respectfully and purposefully, and people are more likely to actually commit to the decisions that the team makes. And we've probably all been, as students, on group projects where the people who were on that group project did not honor their commitments. We know what that feels like, or maybe you did not have that happen. I don't know. You're very lucky if it did not. But when that trust is there, when they're willing to engage in conflict, they're much more willing to commit to decisions, even to commit to working through that difficult assignment that they do. I mean, I've had students on the first day of class tell me before, there's no way I'm standing up in front of these people and presenting a speech. And by the end of the class, they're doing it and doing it well and are surprised at themselves. And I can't take the credit for that. It's the work of, it's the environment that they were in, how their peers interacted with them. I mean, I played a role in it, but I certainly can't take sole credit for it. When the members of a team are willing to commit to decisions, where you can tell in a group where that's absent. What happens is, say you have a class and everybody seems to agree on the path to getting this project done, and then you walk down the hallway and you hear, I don't care what she said, I'm not doing this, or I'm not going to do my part, or I'm not going to, the politicking takes place when the group won't commit. We see that in the workplace a lot. It's where people go to a meeting and they sit in a meeting and they smile and nod at the boss, and then as soon as the meeting is over, they're working behind the scenes to turn colleagues against one another and to undermine the boss. And that happens in our classroom environments too. If the classmates don't feel supported by one another, in my speech class, if after the speech, one of the students walks up to another one, whether they're still in the classroom or not, and says, I can't believe you stood up there and did, that's just going to undermine everything. It will affect not just that student, but everybody in the team, because it won't feel like they're all in this together anymore. It'll feel like somebody's out to get somebody. And when a group of people is truly functioning as a team, the people on that team will hold one another accountable. And sometimes we see that in class too. When you've done an outstanding job cultivating a culture of teamwork in the classroom, when a student is being difficult and one of their classmates says, you know better than that. She told us yesterday exactly what we were supposed to do. You were right here. I saw, that, they're doing what's best for the team when they're willing to hold one another accountable. Now, do we have them long enough to get to that? It depends on, I don't, because I don't have majors. I'm gen ed. I don't see them class after class after class after class. A lot, I would suspect that all of you probably do. I mean, I know some of your students are gen ed, but we have a lot of site majors too, don't we?
I mean, not a whole lot. I don't get to see very many over and over.
Over and over.
Yeah.
But
I have a whole cohort, so yeah.
you
I
work
have
with them all the way
summer,
through.
fall, and yeah, so
Mhm.
we have several classes all together as a group,
Right.
so.
And so that a cohorted group is obviously one that is, I don't want to use the word easier, but where you can go deeper
Really,
into
yeah.
applying this. And if when they graduate with those medical lab skills, they also are, as individual humans, good team members. That's going to make them so valuable to employers. So, and so that's the ultimate goal. And that's kind of to the manager in the business setting. The counter to the argument of I don't have time for all this is your job becomes easier. When you have built a team, they are going to hold each other accountable. And so sure, it takes time, but you invest that time in a positive way to create a culture of teamwork versus dealing with the fallout of what happens when there's not. With the idea being that once you have this group of people where there is an interdependency, they trust each other, they're willing to engage in productive conflict, they are willing to commit to the group decisions. And sometimes that means I don't like the decision, but the time to argue about the decision is over. And now that the decision has been made, this is what we're going to do. Like one of my colleagues does one of our speeches as a group speech, and he gives them topics they can choose from. And as a group, that he forces them to go through that decision-making process. And I think it's very good for them, where they have to go through and agree on a topic, and it's first come, first serve. So if they're sitting arguing about which topic they, instead of trying to reach a consensus, by the time they ask for it, it may be gone. So that type of exercise kind of pushes them into the debating ideas and reaching an agreement in a way that's going to help them get the results that they want. Because in a team, when there's someone who just can argue, I know people who would argue, I could say that is a television monitor. No, it's not. That's not constructive conflict. So even looking at ways to incorporate exercises once we have gone through a trust building process with them, but looking at ways that incorporate the opportunity for them to engage around conflict can really help build that sense of teamwork that is going to develop that skill. And there are a lot of teaching strategies that we can use to do that. Like, Brian, I don't know if you do this or not, but I know in some English classes, people will have students critique each other's drafts. Do you do that?
No.
No. No.
I do a lot of cooperative learning though.
Uh-huh.
I've had a lot of team building training.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is familiar stuff here
Yeah.
and good stuff.
Well, and like one of the things we do in speech class is, and taking the vulnerability-based trust, they know their grade is 100% based on my evaluation of their performance against the rubric. But we ask them to leave feedback for each other in the online classes, in a discussion, or in class on note cards or slips of paper. So they get feedback from their classmates and not just me. When I first started doing that, I did not think to tell them that it wasn't going to affect their grade. And that created terror, that took away that vulnerability based, that was like undermining their trust in me. They almost felt like I was trying to delegate part of their evaluation to someone else. But now, and to make sure they know that it doesn't affect their grade, I give them their feedback, the forms before they leave class that day for the ones that are in-person classes, so they know it doesn't. And but it's always interesting to me to glance at those, because you can see where some folks are, you did a great job with this, but it would be better if you did X. And then some of them are just like smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, who's willing to engage in conflict or not. And that seems to be a skill that many traditional college age students are not coming out of high school with, that ability to critique one another. And so the things that we do that help facilitate a culture of teamwork in the classroom that kind of push them into that space, that will help them as well.
I will say I have done it before, and Kim Carter has dragged me into this.
Oh, what, they having them review each other's?
Yes, and it always has, you give them a checklist, and basically,
Mhm.
does the paper have this, okay? That you make them make a definite decision so that you don't
Mhm.
get smiley face, smiley face, smiley face.
But, and does anybody else do things like that where students are critiquing each other's?
That's a good thought.
I've only done it in the high schools and it's
Uh-huh.
challenging. I've done it with Gary Carpenter's class, his comp class, and my psych class. They have their projects and then we would combine them to get
Yeah.
give feedback on their projects. And It hasn't been as successful as I would like, because they're only meeting and doing that one time. But again, I think building the trust, if we would have.
Right, you know, that foundation
Yeah,
of
if
it.
we maybe
Yeah.
do it a couple different times or something, or
Mhm.
find a better way to do it. I
Mhm.
think it'd be easier with the high school students.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I definitely think the challenge was probably because they had not spent
Yeah.
time together. And that is one of the challenges when we have very short-term classes, is you feel like you've got to hit the ground running from that first moment. But when we skip this connecting at a human level, which is all trust is really about, when we skip that, it makes everything else harder. They're not going to speak up. They're not going to commit. They're going to be looking for ways to get out of it. When that human connection is there, and not just with you and each student, not just one-to-one, but you and each student with one another. Not that they all have to like hold hands and sing Kumbaya in class. I would quit if that were required of the job. But that perception of one another as a human is the foundation of it all. So finding ways to weave that in. And there are ways to do it that can take a very long time. And there are ways to do it like what you're talking about with the cards and the names. That helps you connect with them at that level, and you're modeling that for them. So that is helping them as well. So anything that we can do in our classes that's going to establish that trust, and from there, encourage them to constructively debate ideas. We're going to be ahead of the game when it comes to having a class where, regardless of what the learning objectives are, they will also be leading with some of the skills, the foundational skills that it takes to be a better team member. But it all starts with us. We have to set the expectation. We have to be willing to be vulnerable, and letting them know that if you make a mistake, you would like them to tell you, plays a big role in that. Being proactive in admitting that you're not perfect, letting them see you as a human being, sharing struggles that you had as well. They feel that sense of connection, and they'll start to otherwise share. Sometimes it gets maybe too oversharing. I mean, you can't have your whole classroom, your whole class time be things that are ancillary to the subject matter. But when you get to know them well enough that you know some things about them that you can bring into it. Like another thing that I started doing, which is a tip that I got from one of my colleagues, April Kidd. She has them fill out cards at the beginning of class, and I started doing this. And one of the things she has them put on the card is, instead of asking them to say it in a room full of strangers the first day they met them, which is what I had been doing, she has them put it on this card. And that way down the road, when they're struggling, she can kind of look back at that card and look at what they told her led them to take this class, or to enroll in college, or to go back to college, what their goal is. And she can work that into how she's helping them problem solve how to take care of what needs to be taken care of. And I think that goes a long way toward establishing that trust, because a lot of times the students feel like they're just numbers to us. And so when we have those tidbits that they've shared with us over time, but we recall them and apply them to the challenges they're having them, not only do we help them overcome a barrier that they're experiencing, but we are also laying the groundwork for there to be a true sense of teamwork that hopefully they will take with them into their other classes as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something real quick. I just taught an online section of college success, and they had built in these check-in weekly, Dropbox communication opportunities for these students to just tell them anything. Just, how are you? So I had never experienced that before, because this class was redesigned for
Yeah.
college success. And the overwhelming feedback from the students, even in the end of the course survey, was how much they loved that. So it was a weekly check-in, just they could talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. And it was just a good opportunity to provide feedback on, resources that we have here at Chet State or whatever. So I want to build that into, I teach an eCampus course that I've struggled with was building trust and communication. I'm like, the weekly check-ins.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to share that in case anybody wanted to use that. But it's been, just the feedback was overwhelming, how much they loved it.
And it's a check-in that goes just to the instructor, like it's
Just
not a
the
discussion
Yeah,
board.
it's just a Dropbox and it's just called
I love
check-in
that.
number 1 and it's every week for 6,
Are
6
they
modules.
required to do it
And they
each week?
are required, it's like 10 points each, and they, sometimes they would just give you so much information, but then some, they'd be like, I'm fine, but just, it was really, truly, overwhelming response back. So I will make sure any online course that I teach, I've got to figure out, I don't know if I could do all 6 weeks if I teach, a large class, because it can be a little
Yeah.
overwhelming, but
You
maybe
could do
even if
every
it's every
other.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
But they loved it. Maybe I need to just do it every week, and find that time because it was so good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you think that would be good for, regular
I've
in-person?
been thinking about that too, maybe, especially, I teach the one big intro that's 60, that might be really challenging.
Yeah.
But I have Ed Psych, which is a smaller group that I think I definitely want to start building into that. But just more ways of trust and connection and feeling heard and seen and,
Yep.
so. Yeah, and it was just College Success. It was built by Angie's team that they redesigned it, so I was just like, oh, this works.
I think that's a fantastic idea because one of the challenges, I find the discussions kind of challenging, especially in a purely online class, because there's been a lack of opportunity to build trust. And now we're asking people to share this information where everybody in the group can see it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe if we started with that before we added in
Yeah.
this, I don't know. I've never
Speaking on
thought
that,
of doing that.
Discussion, Skylar that teaches sociology just mentioned this the other day about if we had a way of creating smaller teams for the discussion board where they didn't have to speak to a whole big class.
We were talking about that the other day too, the comm faculty
The
was.
ability to do that in eLearn where you could have just like 5 a part of one discussion.
You have to do it section by section, I believe. Is that correct? Like, I don't think you can tell eLearn to do it for you.
No, you have
So,
to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourself, section by section.
Very group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to learn how to do that because I think that would help with the smaller group for online discussions.
I think so too. I think it would help a lot.
I need to learn how to do that.
Hit me up.
Do you know how to do that? Because I'll come with her to learn how to do that.
We can learn together.
I just mentioned, I just think there could be some good stuff to come out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because in speech now, we're having the online students post a recording to the video of their speech in a discussion board for everybody to see. And they know that, so they're prepared for an audience. Then we're requiring everybody to go and comment on at least 3 of them. So what's happening is some people are getting lots of comments and some people are getting none. And they've really never interacted with each other before because so we were talking about trying to do pods through the class. So they were with each other the whole way through. And that would go a long way toward establishing trust. And they would be much more willing to engage in conflict with constructive feedback instead of great job, which sometimes it is a great job, but if it's not, hey, it would be better if you did X, but that's a skill in and of itself. We're not teaching it. At least we're not, y'all might be, but yeah. Any other questions or comments?
This is all cooperative learning theory.
It's
I'm not sure if
grounded,
you're
yeah.
familiar. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
grounded in cooperative
Mhm.
learning theory, very consistent with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who are they? The Johnson brothers at University of Minnesota back years and years and years ago did a bunch of stuff about small group interactivities and all that, the trust building and all that stuff. And so.
You don't have a team in the absence of trust. Is there anybody in the teams that has questions? Okay.
Haven't seen anybody.
Okay. Well, should we stop the recording?
Yep, I'll end it for you.
Okay. If any of you have anything else you want to talk about, I'm happy to. I thought it might be something you want to talk about that wasn't on recording.
Yeah, we can stop recording if it's